However, a membrane of a living cell is much more complex than a simple phospholipid bilayer. Biological membranes also incorporate other types of lipids, including cholesterol and membrane proteins. Integral membrane proteins span the membrane, while peripheral membrane proteins are bound and exposed on one side only. Many membrane proteins are glycoproteins, which possess covalently attached carbohydrate chains. Many of these proteins found embedded in the membrane are involved in transporting ions and small molecules across membranes that do not cross readily by passive diffusion, either because of their hydrophilic nature or because they would be moving against a concentration gradient. This process is termed facilitated transport. There are two types of membrane transport, passive and active. Keep in mind that the major difference between these two types of transporters is whether they require an input of free energy to function. Passive transport can be thought of as accelerated diffusion. The transporters simply allow the passage of molecules across the membrane at a much faster rate than would occur through normal diffusion, thereby bringing about an equilibrium more rapidly. Because of this, passive transporters do not generate a concentration gradient for a compound across a membrane, but can only dissipate the gradient. Also note that because this process of reaching equilibrium is energetically favored, there is no free energy requirement for passive transport. Active transport involves moving a solute across a membrane against its concentration. This is analogous to moving water uphill and thus requires the input of free energy. The most obvious source of energy within a cell is ATP, and in fact many active transport proteins utilize the hydrolysis of ATP. However, we shall see later that dissipation of a concentration gradient of one solute can be used as a source of free energy to drive the movement of another solute across a membrane against its own gradient. Passive transport can be facilitated by transporters that provide passageways across the membrane of the right size and environment for a particular compound to cross. These types of transporters are often referred to as pores or channels.